communication, key to expansion. This article by Roger Coe of Albuquerque, New Mexico, appeared in the February 1986 Behind News. The Word, Baha'u'llah's legacy. The legacy of every manifestation of God has been the Word that He has revealed for the guidance of His followers. In the following passage, Baha'u'llah speaks of what devolves to the believers as they interact with that Word. Quote, O my friend, it behooveth us to exert the highest endeavor to attain unto that city. That city is none other than the Word of God revealed in every age and dispensation. In the dispensation of Him whom God will make manifest, it is His own book, the book unto which all the books of former dispensations must needs be referred, the book which standeth amongst them all transcendent and supreme. In these cities, spiritual sustenance is bountifully provided, and incorruptible delights have been ordained. The food they bestow is the bread of heaven, and the spirit they impart is God's imperishable blessing. Upon detached souls they bestow the gift of unity, enrich the destitute, and offer the cup of knowledge unto them who wander in the wilderness of ignorance. All the guidance, the blessings, the learning, the understanding, the faith, and certitude conferred upon all that is in heaven and on earth are hidden and treasured within these cities. The Kitab-i-Iqan, pages 199 through 200. End quote. This Word is the creative Word of God, that Word which has the power to restructure the entire creation. In another passage, Baha'u'llah speaks of effecting the change of order with the first word that He spoke in His capacity as a manifestation of God. Quote, I testify that no sooner had the first word proceeded out of His mouth than the whole creation was revolutionized. Through that word, the realities of all created things were shaken, were divided, separated, scattered, combined, and reunited, disclosing in both the contingent world and the heavenly kingdom entities of a new creation. Prayers and Meditations, pages 295-96. Baha'u'llah affirms that each one of the words He has uttered is endowed with a similar power. He says, quote, Every single letter proceeding out of the mouth of God is indeed a mother letter, and every word uttered by Him is a mother word, and His tablet a mother tablet. From Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, page 142. And elsewhere, quote, Every single letter proceeding from our mouth is endowed with such regenerative power as to enable it to bring into existence a new creation, a creation the magnitude of which is inscrutable to all save God. This is from The World Order of Baha'u'llah, page 107. Notwithstanding the fact that many of these words have been in use by mankind prior to the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, the fact that they were uttered by the manifestation of God has endowed them with a unique distinction. Baha'u'llah affirms, The word which the one true God uttereth in this day, though that word be the most familiar and commonplace of terms, is invested with unique distinction. From The World Order of Baha'u'llah, page 104. Baha'u'llah, in his capacity as, quote, the organizer of the entire planet, end quote, God Passes By, page 93, has, through his word, upset the equilibrium of the old order and established the balance of the new world order. He has invested mankind with a similar capacity by endowing each soul with the power to reflect all the names and attributes of God, including the power of creation. Baha'u'llah says, quote, O my servant, obey me, and I shall make thee like unto myself. I say be, and it is, and thou shalt say be, and it shall be. This is from The Seven Valleys and the Four Valleys, page 60. In the Lohe Maqsood, which is found in Tablets of Baha'u'llah, there is a wonderful and lengthy passage on the importance of words, and their proper use by man. Quote, No man of wisdom can demonstrate his knowledge, save by means of words. This showeth the significance of the word, as is affirmed in all the scriptures, whether of former times or more recently. For it is through its potency and animating spirit that the people of the world have attained so eminent a position. Every word is endowed with a spirit. Therefore, The speaker or expounder should carefully deliver his words at the appropriate time and place, for the impression which each word maketh is clearly evident and perceptible. The great being saith, one word may be likened unto fire, another unto light, and the influence which both exert is manifest in the world. Therefore, an enlightened man of wisdom should primarily speak with words as mild as milk, that the children of men may be nurtured and edified thereby, and may attain the ultimate goal of human existence, which is the station of true understanding and nobility. This is from Tablets of Baha'u'llah, pages 172 and 3. Let us reflect for a moment on the significance of words in relation to the work we presently do for the faith. Our basic task as Baha'is is twofold. 1. The promulgation of the word of Baha'u'llah, and 2. The establishment of a worldwide culture and civilization based on that word. The administration of the activities designed to achieve these ends is carried out by bodies whose method is consultation and whose product is a decision. Both the process and the content of the administrative agencies of the faith is represented in words. But these are not ordinary words. They are words spoken for the sake of God and following the order set by Baha'u'llah, that is, intending to carry out His divine plan. They are specifically designed to create a visible effect in the world and in the hearts of men in accordance with the laws and principles of Baha'u'llah. The beloved Guardian, in one of his first letters to the American Baha'i community, spoke of the purpose of the National Spiritual Assembly, and specifically connected the accomplishment of that task to the necessity for communication. Quote, the National Spiritual Assembly's immediate purpose is to stimulate, unify, and coordinate, by frequent personal consultations, the manifold activities of the Friends, as well as the local assemblies, and by keeping in close and constant touch with the Holy Land, initiate measures and direct in general the affairs of the cause in that country. From Baha'i Administration, page 39. During the course of his ministry, besides his one book and his several book-length letters, the Guardian wrote more than 26,000 letters to assemblies, committees, and individuals, expounding upon the word of Baha'u'llah, guiding the Friends, and organizing them in the gradual construction of the world order of Baha'u'llah. In these letters, he indicated time and again the importance of communication and urged the Friends to focus on the means for communication as well as the content of what was being said. In a letter he wrote in 1931, which is included in the World Order Letters, he quotes Abdu'l-Baha's definitive statement that even the possibility for the achievement of world order is linked directly to the development of means for communication. Quote, in cycles gone by, though harmony was established, yet owing to the absence of means, the unity of all mankind could not have been achieved. Continents remained widely divided. Nay, even among the peoples of one and the same continent, association and interchange of thought were well nigh impossible. Consequently, intercourse, understanding, and unity amongst all the peoples and kindreds of the earth were unattainable. In this day, however, means of communication have multiplied, and the 5 continents of the earth have virtually merged into one. Hence, the unity of all mankind can in this day be achieved. The World Order of Baha'u'llah, pages 38 and 9. From the following letter, it is clear that even in 1923, the Guardian was tremendously burdened by the correspondence which was so necessary to the organization of the work of the cause, and hoped for a, quote, solution to the problem. Quote, I am sure you all realize the seemingly unsurmountable difficulties in the way of individual correspondence with the ever-increasing multitude of Baha'is throughout the world, and I need hardly tell you how tremendously difficult it is and how reluctant I feel to discriminate at all between the many letters of varying importance which I daily receive from almost every corner of the globe. Realizing, however, that direct and intimate individual correspondence in some form or another is most urgent and vital to the interests of the cause, I am, I assure you, giving it these days again my careful and undivided attention, and pray God that to this problem may soon be found a satisfactory and feasible solution. In the meantime, I wish to emphasize the fact that I eagerly await and would welcome and would assuredly have time to peruse most carefully and in person every individual letter you may wish to send me, and my readiness and wish to attend in the very best way I can to every matter raised in those letters. No written message, however unimportant, will first be opened and read by anyone save myself. Baha'i Unfolding Destiny, pages 16 and 17. In another early letter, the Guardian indicates the importance of communication between the various institutions around the world for forging a bond of brotherhood and common purpose. Quote, they, the assemblies, must make an effort to maintain official, regular, and frequent correspondence with the various Baha'i centers throughout the world, report to them their activities, and share the glad tidings they receive with all their fellow workers in the cause. They must encourage and stimulate by every means at their command, through subscription, reports, and articles, the development of the various Baha'i magazines. From Baha'i Administration, page 38. The Universal House of Justice, in its Nowruz 1974 message to the Baha'is of the world, reiterated the Guardian's emphasis on the importance of communication and words in general, encouraging the believers to adopt means that are more efficient and rapid. Quote, the dissemination of news and messages, so vital to the knowledge, encouragement, and unity of the Baha'i community, must be made efficient and rapid, and in anticipation of a vast expansion in the number of believers, of local spiritual assemblies, and of localities where Baha'is reside, a coordinated program of translating and publishing Baha'i literature with the eventual aim of providing the sacred text and the teachings of the faith to all mankind is to be developed. The proclamation of the faith, following established plans and aiming on use on an increasing scale, the facilities of mass communication must be vigorously pursued. From the 5-year plan, page 5. We are not only encouraged as individuals to stimulate one another through our letters, magazines, and personal communications. Consultation is a law, which is specifically enjoined upon our administrative bodies. This law is of such importance that Shoghi Effendi has called it, quote, the bedrock of this unique order. From Consultation, a compilation, page 15. The supreme importance of these consultative bodies lies in the fact that in them resides the sole authority for the administration of the affairs of the faith. No individual in the Baha'i world has more power or administrative authority than any other individual. All administrative authority is vested in elected bodies whose method of operation is consultation. In the following passage, Shoghi Effendi indicates the scope of the authority and the efficacy of the method of these consultative bodies. The principle of consultation, which constitutes one of the basic laws of the administration, should be applied to all Baha'i activities which affect the collective interests of the faith, for it is through cooperation and continued exchange of thoughts and views that the cause can best safeguard and foster its interests. Individual initiative, personal ability, and resourcefulness, though indispensable, are, unless supported and enriched by the collective experiences and wisdom of the group, utterly incapable of achieving such a tremendous task. From Consultation, a compilation, page 15. What needs to be done? In the promulgation of the word of Baha'u'llah, and in the creation of a new worldwide culture and civilization, the primary tasks that must be accomplished are all concerned with consultation, communication, and motivation. But the achievement of these goals also requires knowledge of the Word and its authoritative interpretations, and administrative skill in doing such work as planning, organization, management, and monitoring. Knowledge of the principles of Baha'u'llah and skill in consultation and the methods of science are among the primary requisites for all of these activities. In one of the Guardian's early letters to the American Baha'i community, he spoke of the role in organizing and shepherding the community that would be undertaken by the future International House of Justice, saying that, quote, the Supreme Council will guide, organize, and unify the affairs of the movement throughout the world. Baha'i Administration, page 39. But it is not necessarily the administrative agencies who will do all the work, or, for that matter, even initiate every impetus for the faith as a whole to move in any particular direction. The individual has a not inconsiderable part in this process. In the words of Shoghi Effendi, quote, "It is the individual believer on whom, in the last resort, depends the fate of the entire community. He it is who constitutes the warp and woof on which the quality and pattern of the whole fabric must depend. Without his support, at once wholehearted, continuous, and generous, every measure adopted and every plan formulated by the body which acts as the national representative of the community to which he belongs is foredoomed to failure. The administrative agencies of a divinely conceived administrative order, at long last erected and relatively perfected, stand in dire need of the individual believer to come forward and utilize them with undeviating purpose, serene confidence, and exemplary the greater responsibility lies." Baha'u'llah, in the Lohe Maqsood, says, quote, "The man of consummate learning and the sage endowed with penetrating wisdom are the two eyes to the body of mankind. God willing, the earth shall never be deprived of these two greatest gifts. Please God, the peoples of the world may be led, as the result of the high endeavors exerted by their rulers and the wise and learned amongst men, to recognize their best interests." This is from Tablets of Baha'u'llah, page 171. Abdu'l-Baha adds his injunction, quote, "It is essential that scholars and the spiritually learned should undertake in all sincerity and purity of intent, and for the sake of God alone, to counsel and exhort the masses, and clarify their vision with that collyrium which is knowledge." The Secret of Divine Civilization, page 39. In the concluding passages of The Secret of Divine Civilization, Abdu'l-Baha's treatise on social and political development and the responsibilities of the learned within those arenas, the Master indicates the supreme importance of communication of thought and the proper directing of public opinion, as he writes, quote, "It is therefore urgent that beneficial articles and books be written, clearly and definitely establishing what the present-day requirements of the people are, and what will conduce to the happiness and advancement of society. The publication of high thoughts is the dynamic power in the arteries of life. It is the very soul of the world. Thoughts are a boundless sea, and the effects and varying conditions of existence are as the separate forms and individual limits of the waves. Not until the sea boils up will the waves rise and scatter their pearls of knowledge on the shore of life. Public opinion must be directed toward whatever is worthy of this day, and this is impossible except through the use of adequate arguments and the adducing of clear, comprehensive, and conclusive proofs. For the helpless masses know nothing of the world, and while there is no doubt that they seek and long for their own happiness, yet ignorance, like a heavy veil, shuts them away from it. Furthermore, he, in that same book, indicates what the collective responsibility of the scholars and the learned is in connection with the structuring and ordering of the affairs of the world. Quote, "In view of the fact that at the present time fully developed and comprehensively learned individuals are hard to come by, and the government and people are in dire need of order and direction, it is essential to establish a body of scholars, the various groups of whose membership would each be expert in one of the aforementioned branches of knowledge." Parenthetically, in preceding passages, these are cited as, quote, "knowledge of the sacred scriptures and the entire field of divine and natural science, of religious jurisprudence and the arts of government, and the varied learning of the time, and the great events of history," in prin. This body should, with the greatest energy and vigor, deliberate as to all present and future requirements, and bring about equilibrium and order. The Secret of Divine Civilization, page 37. In 1949, the Guardian admonished the believers to work toward, quote, "a more profound and coordinated Baha'i scholarship." This is from The Importance of Deepening, page 49. But it seems that we have had some difficulty in carrying out this instruction. Baha'i scholars and others who study deeply the writings of the faith often are spread so far apart from each other that collaboration and coordination is physically and financially impossible. And while the faith has always had in its ranks scholars and learned individuals, there has not been, until recently, an official administrative channel through which they might efficiently and effectively coordinate their efforts and collaborate in devising solutions to the problem problems facing the Baha'i community. Shortly after assuming its duties, the Universal House of Justice established its research department, and in 1968 made provision for the extension into the future of the functions of the Institution of the Learned through establishment of the Continental Boards of Counselors. 5 years later, the International Teaching Center was brought into existence. In the mid-1970s, the Association for Baha'i Studies was begun, and within the past year, the Boards of Counselors have received instructions from the House of Justice to assist the community of scholars. But the communications medium through which these scholars might be convened has not yet been effectively established. The beloved Guardian gave voice to a similar plaint as early in his ministry as 1923. We would do well to hear again his wish and pause to reflect on how we might complete by proxy his long-cherished hope that we work closely with others in establishing the cause of Baha'u'llah. Quote, "After a long and unbroken silence, it gives me the greatest joy to be enabled to correspond again with my dearly beloved co-workers of the National Spiritual Assembly. Your 3 letters have been safely received, and to each I have given my earnest and fullest attention. Their perusal, which reflects only a certain amount of your activities, together with the study of the enclosed communications and circulars, and of the detailed and admirable report of the proceedings of the annual convention, have all served to heighten my admiration for the thoroughness, the ability, and the devotion with which you are conducting the affairs of the cause of God in that land. How often I have wished and yearned to be nearer to the field of your activities, and thus be able to keep in a more constant and closer touch with every detail of the manifold and all-important services you render. I cherish the hope of the heart 62 and 3. The efficacy of consultation in connection with working together on projects is clearly set forth in the writings of Abdu'l-Baha. Quote, "The purpose of consultation is to show that the views of several individuals are assuredly preferable to one man. Thus, consultation hath been enjoined upon the believers, so that they may confer upon ordinary and personal matters as well as on affairs which are general in nature and universal. For instance, when a man hath a project to accomplish, should he consult with some of his brethren, that which is agreeable will of course be investigated and unveiled to his eyes, and the truth will be disclosed. The members of each profession, such as in industry, should consult, and those in commerce should similarly consult on business affairs. In short, consultation is desirable and acceptable in all things and on all issues." From Consultation, a Compilation, pages 8 and 9. "Settle all things, both great and small, by consultation. Without prior consultation, take no important step in your own personal affairs. Concern yourselves with one another. Help along one another's projects and plans." Consultation, a Compilation, page 9. The task ahead of the Baha'i world is the most monumental undertaking that has ever confronted any group of people throughout all of recorded history. It is a task that is not only going to require study, research, and deepening on the part of a great many scholars, it is going to require that all of that work be coordinated and systematized. This task, in brief, is none other than the organization and management of the entire range of human and material resources around the world for the benefit of all mankind. In the world order of Baha'u'llah, Shoghi Effendi has given us a vision of the pattern of this future society. Quote, "A mechanism of world intercommunication will be devised, embracing the whole planet, freed from national hindrances and restrictions, and functioning with marvelous swiftness and perfect regularity. A world metropolis will act as the nerve center of a world civilization, the focus towards which the unifying forces of life will converge, and from which its energizing influences will radiate. In such a world society, science and religion, the two most potent forces in human life, will be reconciled, will cooperate, and will harmoniously develop. The enormous energy dissipated and wasted on war will be consecrated to such ends as will extend the range of human inventions and technical development, to the increase in the productivity of mankind, to the extension of scientific research, to the sharpening and refinement of the human brain, to the exploitation of the unused and unsuspected resources of the planet, to the prolongation of human life, and to the furtherance of any other agency that can stimulate the intellectual, the moral, and spiritual life of the entire human race. World Order of Baha'u'llah, pages 203 and 4. This passage was written in 1939, in the dark beginnings of a world war, and at a time when few had ever even dreamed of such prospects. Yet here is a clear and definite anticipation of the communication system that our modern scientific age has made a reality. And is this not a major miracle? It was only 100 years ago from the present date that Baha'u'llah, seeking to impress upon Nabil Akbar the wonders of the past ages, set forth as an example the achievement of Martos, who, quote, invented an apparatus which transmitted sound over a distance of 60 miles, from Tablets of Baha'u'llah, page 150. These inventions and discoveries are not happenstance. The plan of God requires the means for its implementation, and the word of Baha'u'llah has unleashed the potentiality for all of the necessary sciences and technologies to come into existence. Adib Taherzadeh, in volumes 1 and 3 of his series, The Revelation of Baha'u'llah, speaks at length of the connection between the faith of Baha'u'llah and the developments in the communication sciences. Quote, since the appearance of the Bab, man's advances in both material and spiritual civilization have been prodigious. The unprecedented increase in scientific discoveries has, within a short period of time, established a marvelous system of communication throughout the world, which is of the utmost significance if we are to evaluate correctly the plan of God for mankind. The diffusion of the light of the faith of Baha'u'llah throughout the entire planet and the proclamation of its message on a global scale could be realized only at a time when the peoples of the world are able to communicate easily with one another. Without a worldwide system of communication linking all humanity together, the faith of Baha'u'llah would have been impractical and ineffective. For this is a faith whose basic teachings revolve around the principle of the oneness of mankind. Its message is universal, and its aim is to establish a spiritual world order for all who dwell on earth. In the early days of the faith in Persia, many believers could not visualize the manner in which the cause of Baha'u'llah would reach the remote corners of the earth. The only way of traveling known to them was by walking or riding a donkey or a mule. The question which puzzled them most was how they could cover such long distances to teach the cause. At that time, no one could have offered a solution except to say that God would create the means. But the Bab had stated that mankind should establish a system of swift communications so that the news of the coming of Him whom God shall make manifest could reach the whole world. Now this has happened, and within such a short period, a miraculous scientific revolution has taken place. Today the world has become one world. Man can communicate with the speed of light and travel faster than sound. The Bab had indeed ushered in a new era in human knowledge, paving the way for the coming of Baha'u'llah. From the Revelation of Baha'u'llah, Volume 1, pages 216 and 17. Baha'u'llah affirms, again quote, Baha'u'llah affirms in the Surah Haikal that through the outpouring of knowledge from the heart of the Haikal, He will soon raise up scientists of great caliber who will bring about such marvelous technological achievements that no one can as yet imagine them. This prophecy of Baha'u'llah has already been fulfilled, and this is only the beginning. The technological developments which have taken place in the field of communication since the advent of the Bab bear ample testimony to this. As the faith of Baha'u'llah grew, the means of communication kept pace with it. In surveying the progress of their faith, the followers of Baha'u'llah have seen that whenever the propagation of the faith or the building of the administrative order needed some new material means, they were miraculously provided in time. Some of the new inventions which have played a vital role in the development of the faith that have come about just in time to serve a particular need. To cite one example of many, Baha'u'llah revealed many tablets, epistles, and books, which, if compiled, would produce about 100 volumes. Abdu'l-Baha's writings are no less in range. The writings of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha contain, among other things, teachings, both spiritual and social, laws, exhortations, and explanations about many subjects including man, the purpose of his life, and his relationship to God. Added to these are the voluminous writings of Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith. In addition to his famous works, he has written no less than 26,000 letters, some of them so lengthy that they warranted being printed in the form of a book. His writings contain invaluable guidance which, as the authorized interpreter of the words of Baha'u'llah, he has given to the Baha'i world. It can be seen, therefore, that the Baha'i holy writings are enormous in range and contain matters of vital interest for all humanity. When the Universal House of Justice, the supreme governing body of the Baha'i community, came into being in 1963, one of the most essential needs was the collating of all the writings of the central figures of the faith, and the making of a comprehensive index of all subjects they contained. This was a vital necessity for the supreme institution of the faith, which had to have access to each and every subject recorded in these writings, so that it could guide the Baha'i community in accordance with the teachings of Baha'u'llah, and also legislate, whenever feasible, on matters which were not explicitly mentioned in these writings. Up until the formation of the Universal House of Justice, it was impossible even to attempt to make this comprehensive index. Such a colossal undertaking, involving the provision of a detailed list of every subject within such a vast range of writings, could not have been a practical proposition, given the small size of the Baha'i community, because of the non-existence of technological aids at that time. The invention of these aids, such as photocopiers and electronic processors, and their commercial use, were almost synchronized with the birth of the supreme body of the faith of Baha'u'llah, and this vital task was undertaken. Had it not been for this timely development, insignificant as it may seem today, it is difficult to imagine how the Universal House of Justice could have discharged its sacred functions in the Baha'i world effectively, bearing in mind that prior to taking every major decision, the supreme body has to refer to the writings of Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoei Effendi, and to take into consideration their words which have a bearing on the subject. This is from the Revelation of Baha'u'llah, Volume 3, pages 137 through 140. Norbert Wiener, the chief founder of the science of cybernetics, that is, the science of control and communication, foresaw many of the possibilities that were inherent in the advent of the communication and information sciences. In his book, The Human Use of Human Beings, Cybernetics and Society, written in 1950, he says, "Communication in society is the cement which binds its fabric together." That's from page 39. The integrity of the channels of internal communication is essential to the welfare of society. This is from page 179. With the airplane and the radio, the word of the rulers extends to the ends of the earth, and very many of the factors which previously precluded a world state have been abrogated. It is even possible to maintain that modern communication, which forces us to adjudicate the international claims of different broadcasting systems and different airplane nets, has made the world state inevitable. From pages 124 and 25. While the presently available technology in the communications industry is extremely useful in and of itself, it takes on an even greater significance and facility when it is fused with the present technological advances that have been made available to humanity from the information processing sciences. The result of this fusion is the creation of a new information environment, which already has had enormous societal impact. Yet society has not even begun to tap the deeper potential of this environment. The world order of Baha'u'llah will, through fusion of the communication and information processing technologies, have tremendous ordering capabilities at hand, through which the management of the world can be accomplished. At this point, it is important to say something about the connection and relationship which the philosophy and theory of the information processing sciences have to the faith of Baha'u'llah. Information is a word that has been in the English language for some time, but heretofore it has meant little more than a collection of facts. Baha'u'llah, however, as quoted in Note 5 above, says that the words he has uttered have been invested with a new spirit, even those words which once were the most familiar and commonplace of terms. Information is one such word, one that has been invested with tremendous significance in the most fundamental manner. The new way in which scientists and philosophers conceive of information has implications for the very structure of the philosophy of the way in which we perceive the reality of nature, the nature of reality. For most information from the realm of science and Philosophy, the reader is referred to Mind and Nature, A Necessary Unity by Gregory Bateson, The Turning Point by Fritz Capra, and The Human Use of Human Beings by Norbert Wiener. In God Passes By, Shoghi Effendi speaks of some of the more important tablets from the pen of Baha'u'llah. One of those he mentions is the Loh-e-Hikmat, Tablet of Wisdom, which can be found in Tablets of Baha'u'llah. Shoghi Effendi says that in this tablet, Baha'u'llah sets forth the fundamentals of true philosophy. It's on page 219 of God Passes By. Besides a wealth of other implications in this tablet, which relate to the importance of information, pattern, and order, one will see that Baha'u'llah invokes God in the name of the All-Informed a great many times throughout the tablet. In fact, of all the names of God used in this tablet, there is only one, the All-Wise, that is used more often. What is information, and what is its importance to us here? Daniel Bell, a Harvard professor of sociology and chief protagonist of the New Information Society, defines information relative to data and knowledge. Data, he says, is a discrete fact at the most basic level, whereas, quote, information is a pattern or design that rearranges data for instrumental purposes, while knowledge is the set of reasoned judgments that evaluates the adequacy of the pattern for the purposes for which the information is designed. Information is thus pattern recognition, subject to reorganization by the knower in accordance with specified purposes. This is from The Social Framework of the Information Society in the Microelectronics Revolution, page 509. With the development of electronic data processing technology, we now have the capacity to store and retrieve discrete data that is arranged in an informational pattern, whether as an indexed database or in a form representing a logical structure or a sequence of logical structures, for example, a computer program, and to manipulate that data in accordance with these patterns at tremendously rapid rates. Because electronic data processors operate on the basis of a difference between one state and another, i.e., 0 or 1, which have no inherent meaning, they only indicate difference, they can process information using the processes of binary arithmetic. By setting up data in logical structures in terms of Boolean algebra, a rich and varied logic is made available for manipulation at computational speeds approaching the speed of light. Central processing units found in the common personal computers in many of our homes are routinely capable of performing more than 2 million arithmetic operations a second. I feel that it is important to note here the correlation between the processes of electronic data processors and the fundamental nature of the contingent world as defined by Baha'u'llah. He has identified the qualities of, quote, distinction, differentiation, temporal limitations, characteristics, and standards. This comes from the Kitab-i-Iqan, page 178. As being fundamental to the nature of the contingent world, the world of names and attributes. In translating that which hath been written into reality and action, from Gleanings, page 250, scientists have discovered applications for some of the most fundamental processes of the contingent world, and have brought into being a technology which will be of tremendous benefit to all mankind. The fusion of these capabilities with the communications technologies has created the capacity, for the first time in history, for the rational organization and management of the affairs of the world from a nerve center, which has a rich and abundant communicational path to each of the various organs and centers in the body of the world. In commenting on the potential of this capacity, Professor Bell has said that the, quote, methodological promise of the second half of the 20th century is the management of organized complexity. This comes from page 503 in his article, The Social Framework of the Information Society. Can we imagine a more complex management problem than the mandate Baha'u'llah has given to the Universal House of Justice? I think not, and it is precisely for this reason that Baha'is, and especially Baha'i administrators, scholars, and the learned, must step into this realm of management and do so quickly, with full consciousness of the implications of what they are doing. In a rather abstrusely worded passage in the World Order of Baha'u'llah, Shoghi Effendi indicates that if we would use, quote, the facilities which modern scientific progress has placed at the service of humanity in our time, we would find the task of achieving the unity of all mankind to be infinitely less complex than the problem of welding the American states into a single federation during the founding of our republic. This comes from the World Order of Baha'u'llah, page 45. As the promulgation of the Word and the ordering of society are our primary tasks, are not the communication and information processing technologies heavily implicated? In another passage, the Guardian says, quote, "The Baha'i should not always be the last to take up new and obviously excellent methods, but rather the first, as this agrees with the dynamic nature of the faith, which is not only progressive, but holds within itself the seeds of an entirely new culture and civilization." It's from Design for Victory, page 13. The Guardian also indicates that one of the purposes of Baha'u'llah in designing such flexibility into the structure of the administrative order is so that, quote, "whatever is deemed necessary to incorporate into the machinery of the cause in order to keep it in the forefront of all progressive movements could be safely embodied therein." It's from the World Order of Baha'u'llah, pages 22 and 3. What are these new and excellent methods, these gifts of modern scientific progress that I am proposing we incorporate into the machinery of the cause to reduce the complexity of the task of achieving the unification of mankind? And how are they so different from what has been available from science in the past? The prospects for the advancement of the work of the cause in light of recent and anticipated scientific and technological advances are truly incredible. In the past few years, there has been established a world-embracing satellite-based communications network that functions with marvelous swiftness and perfect regularity. There has been a continual drop in the ratio between computing power and cost. An ever-increasing volume of information is being stored in ever smaller storage units. There has been a wide-ranging decentralization of information processing power with the proliferation of personal computers in the homes of ordinary citizens. And amazing developments in all areas of computer programming have taken place that are so wide-ranging and remarkable as only those who are at once aware of the future world society predicted by the central figures of the faith and who are actively staying abreast of the whole range of developments in the fields of computers and telecommunications can adequately appreciate. The ramifications of the scientific and technological achievements in information processing and in the means of communication have the potential to influence every aspect of Baha'i life and work, but most significantly the arena of the administration of the faith. The word of Baha'u'llah has established a new order in the world of being. The structural basis of this order is the administrative order of the faith, whose functions are to propagate the word of Baha'u'llah, maintain unity among the body of the believers, and guide the corporate body of the followers of Baha'u'llah into an efflorescent civilization based upon his teachings. The work of maintaining unity of action and unity of belief in guiding the community gradually into the future is primarily a work that involves communication, organization, and management, and each of these areas has, in particular, felt in great measure the impact of the fusion of the communication and information processing sciences. Perhaps the most significant development, to the author's mind, is the possibility of linking the personal computer in one's home with any other personal or corporate computer simply by using the telephone system. This, together with conferencing software that can facilitate one-to-many communications, bears the possibility of increasing in a revolutionary way the quality and quantity of the communications capacity of the faith as a whole. In the early days of the faith, as Mr. Taherzadeh has pointed out, the teachers of the faith walked from place to place or rode donkeys or mules. The word which had been revealed was laboriously copied by hand by scribes who were in the service of Baha'u'llah. Later, many of these precious tablets were translated into other languages and began to make their way out into the spreading Baha'i community. It is widely known that in America, copy after copy was typed by hand with as many carbons as the typewriter could carry. Gradually, as money became available, the books and prayers of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha were printed. Magazines, such as Star of the West, were brought into being to provide a reasonably current channel for the communications of Abdu'l-Baha and Shoghi Effendi. As the technology of the telegraph became more widespread throughout the world, the beloved guardian made increasing use of that facility. According to Amatul Baha Ruhiya Khanum in The Priceless Pearl, quote, "Since the inception of his ministry, Shoghi Effendi has increasingly used the medium of telegrams and cablegrams, not only because they save time, but because, as he explained to me, of their psychological effect. A cable conveys a sense of urgency and drama, and is often a better way of driving home one's point." From The Priceless Pearl, page 225. In the nearly 30 years since the passing of Shoghi Effendi, science and technology seem to have outdone themselves. We now have available for our use a vast array of technological and even conceptual devices, by means of which we can process the word of Baha'u'llah and communicate quite rapidly with one another, and to a tremendously abundant degree. By way of illustrating how presently available technology might be used in service to the faith, I will sketch briefly the outline of a very real problem that we as Baha'is will face in the very near future, and attempt to show how utilization of this technology would decrease the complexity of meeting the challenge. Of course, this scenario assumes that these technical aids would already be in use by the administrative agencies of the faith, something we have yet to accomplish in a widespread manner. In Citadel of Faith, the Guardian maps out certain stages in the growth of the faith and ends by saying, quote, "The entry by troops of peoples of diverse nations and races into the Baha'i world will be the prelude to that long-awaited hour when a mass conversion on the part of these same nations and races, and as a direct result of a chain of events, momentous and possibly catastrophic in nature, will suddenly revolutionize the fortunes of the faith, derange the equilibrium of the world, and reinforce 1,000-fold the numerical strength as well as the material power and the spiritual authority of the faith of Baha'u'llah." Citadel of Faith, page 117. What will we do when, for every one of us, there are more than 1,000 souls to educate in the cause of Baha'u'llah? How can we meet the challenge of organizing and training the spiritual assemblies, of ensuring that each assembly has the guidance it needs to assist both its internal community and the larger community in all aspects of societal development? The scenario begins. As it became increasingly apparent that the fortunes of the faith in America were about to be revolutionized, the members of the National Spiritual Assembly consulted among themselves via the computer conferencing service that had been leased from a major university, using the communicating word processors the Assembly had recently purchased. After availing itself of the guidance at hand from Shoghi Effendi and the Universal House of Justice, the National Spiritual Assembly decided to convene a full-time advisory task force that would be charged with organizing a suitable approach to the problem which was soon to come up. The task force would have at its disposal the facilities of the recently completed integrated database of the writings of the Bab, Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi, and the letters and other messages from the Universal House of Justice. Parenthetically, the communications which had been sent to the American Baha'i community from itself over the past 70 years had not been placed in the larger database, as the National Assembly felt the need to have them organized so that a comprehensive review of its past decisions could be performed when time permitted. In print. Scholars of the faith had already begun preliminary organizational work on the database, which had been put into the computer-readable format by scanning all of the extant writings of the faith with a newly purchased optical character reader. Complete concordances of all the writings were being printed out as fast as the laser printer could turn them out. Several research teams composed of scholars from across the country, who consulted with one another via the same computer conferencing network used by the National Spiritual Assembly, were each experimenting with various conceptual methods of organizing, outlining, and indexing the writings. As the personal computers which these scholars had in their homes did not have enough memory capacity to hold all of the writings in a single, easily manipulated database, the research teams had been organized by the Association for Baha'i Studies to experiment with different ways of conceiving the time from the results with the beloved guardian to guide their works, which above all consisted of, quote, "a masterly orientation of thought towards the concepts enshrined in the teachings of the faith, and the orderly classification of those teachings into what might well be described as a vast panoramic view of the meaning, implications, destiny, and purpose of the religion of Baha'u'llah, indeed of religious truth itself, in its portrayal of man as the apogee of God's creation, evolving towards the consummation of his development, the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. From The Priceless Pearl, page 226 and 27. Meanwhile, the Advisory Task Force, which was composed of a multidisciplinary team of Baha'is, had outlined the task ahead by using an idea organizer, or outlining program, on the personal computer in their conference room. They knew they were organizing for a time in the future when the material resources of the faith would be increased, but the organization and preparation to meet that time had to take place within the present budgetary limits. As an appropriate approach to the challenge began to take place, the project was planned with clear-cut goals and all of the necessary milestones, objectives, and timelines fixed in place to meet these goals. The task was made much clearer to everyone by using the project management software that was running on the office personal computer. The critical path had been determined, and by using the electronic spreadsheet, the presently available funds had been juggled such that the National Spiritual Assembly would have to increase the annual contributions goal by only 17% during the coming year. Within 3 weeks, the plan was presented to the National Spiritual Assembly at a meeting called especially for that purpose. Obviously, there was much work left to do. Organization is one thing, and very important, but there were tutorials to be designed for the online computerized databases that would be set up. Much of the work depended on the rational organization of the integrated databases the scholars were working on, and as much of the technology was relatively new, there was much to learn and a lot of testing that had to be done. Nevertheless, several aspects of the work stood out clearly, and work could begin on them right away. The teaching committee had to make plans to expand the membership database in such a way as to monitor the educational progress of the newly enrolled believers. The Business and Professional Affairs Committee had to target certain notable people and issue a call to the general community for help in organizing a portfolio of interests, susceptibilities, and inhibiting factors for each of those targeted. It also needed to identify individual Baha'is who could call upon those people to proclaim the faith to them. Meanwhile, data processing already is at work preparing the system for the input and update of membership information from the field generated by district teaching committees. The Baha'i schools, which had permanent staff on board, had been consulting for some time on the computer conferencing network about the coordination of Baha'i scholarship. There were certain priorities that had been identified in relation to the challenge at hand, and the schools had organized research teams composed of the scholars they knew and had solicited help from other Baha'is through the American Baha'i to begin the needed research. Since the National Convention had begun meeting year-round on the conferencing network, the National Spiritual Assembly had a tremendous resource pool of deepened believers available for consultation at a moment's notice, and the convention never adjourned. The counselors and auxiliary board members were also were busy, consulting with the National Assembly, advising local spiritual assemblies, conferring with individual Baha'is, and in general, monitoring the rapid development of the national community they protect and serve. The Social and Economic Development Committee had established contacts within and outside the Baha'i community in preparation for establishing an electronic Peace Corps that would consist of technical experts from all areas of science, business, and social services who would be on call over the conferencing net in the event their particular expertise was needed. Meanwhile, the Publishing Trust had begun duplicating volumes of the various Baha'i works on computer diskettes that would then be sold to the Friends so they could work on making compilations, doing research, and, in general, deepening their knowledge of the faith. The word processing programs the Friends had in their personal computers at home gave them the capability they needed to process the word so as to make it more accessible to seekers, the study groups they had organized, etc. All of this was being done by the rank-and-file Baha'is. For years, the National Spiritual Assembly had dreamed of a system that would allow it to make rapid and efficient use of all the energy and competence that exists in the rank and file of the believers. As Shoghi Effendi had said, that this is the first quality for leadership, both among individuals and assemblies. From the Local Spiritual Assembly, page 22. This potential was now made manifest because of the establishment of an effective communications infrastructure that provided the possibility for Baha'is, no matter where they lived, no matter how little they could travel for the faith, no matter how tied down they were in their professional or personal lives, to consult together in doing research and development on projects that were needed by the faith and whose priority had been clearly identified by the National Spiritual Assembly. Thus, the scenario ends. The challenges that lie ahead of us are of such magnitude that the only way we are going to be able to meet them is to work together, to coordinate the work with common goals and clear objectives in mind. It is now possible to do this with present technology, if we but heed the Guardian's advice about using these things, those things that modern scientific progress has given to humanity. Quote, "The world is contracted and transformed into a single, highly complex organism by the marvelous progress achieved in the realm of physical science and by the worldwide expansion of commerce and industry." From The World Order of Baha'u'llah, page 47. The Guardian has given us the task of establishing the nucleus of, quote, "a world federal system ruling the whole earth and exercising unchallengeable authority over its unimaginably vast resources." From World Order of Baha'u'llah, page 203. This is the task of the Universal House of Justice and its sustaining pillars, the National Spiritual Assemblies. We have long known the promise, but we have only been able to wonder how this might be accomplished. Now, with the construction of the mechanism of world intercommunication and the development of information processing tools that allow for automation of the necessary conceptual processes for the organization and management of such a complexity, aspects of the methodology for the accomplishment of this paramount task are being unveiled to the eyes of the Baha'i world. America as a whole has been blessed by Baha'u'llah. Much of the technology we take for granted is not even a dream in the minds of millions of people around the world. Yet these are the very mechanisms that will provide the means for the unification of mankind. Shoghi Effendi referred to the unique challenge America faces when he wrote, quote, "The world is moving on. Its events are unfolding ominously and with bewildering rapidity. The new world, America, is being insensibly drawn into its vortex. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans are, with every acceleration in the march of science, steadily shrinking into mere channels. The great Republic of the West finds itself particularly and increasingly involved. The world is contracting into a neighborhood. America, willingly or unwillingly, must face and grapple with this new situation. For purposes of national security, let alone any humanitarian motive, she must assume the obligations imposed by this newly created neighborhood. Paradoxical as it may seem, her only hope of extricating herself from the perils gathering around her is to become entangled in that very web of international association which the hand of an inscrutable providence is weaving." From The Advent of Divine Justice, pages 73 and 74. This ends the article.